Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show.
Hi, everyone. This is Simone Morris. You are in for a super treat this week. This week's guest is Kelly Hoey. She is the author of Build Your Dream Network. And let me tell you, she is dropping all sorts of wisdom on the podcast, so please listen in. But before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to share some good news with you. I just launched the Simone Morris Enterprise Academy, and it is an online academy for you to go and get your learning needs met. The first course is available, and it is called 7 Steps to Get You in the Driver's Seat for Your Career. I am so excited about this academy because it allows me to provide training for those of you that can't come in person to the workshops and retreats that I offer. So go to the SimoneMorris.com website, click on Academy from the menu, and take a look at our newest course. Again, it is 7 Steps to Get You in the Driver's Seat for Your Career. I hope to hear from you and see you over there. Without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of the podcast. In episode 9 of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, I am joined by Kelly Hoey, who is a marketing expert, a networking guru, an author, a speaker, and so much more. Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I have to tell you how this came about. And I was introduced to you by my husband. He was getting your marketing newsletter and he said, honey, you've got to check this woman out. And so I had your information in my mailbox and I would look at it from time to time. And then I signed up for the WeBank conference and I went, oh, look, she's going to be there. I've got to meet her. So I made it a point to go to your session at the WeBank conference. And what I remember most is how authentic, transparent, and kind that you were. And I got to hug you at the end. You signed my book. And I was like, I love her. So that was my introduction to you.
Thank you. That was such a great conference.
It was indeed.
You know, and
so
I think
inspiring.
I think it's one of those things that when women, whether at any point in their career, I'm not going to say women business owners or women, at any point in their career, women should go to conferences that are female focused. Because I think it gives you that inspiration, that sort of extra jolt of, stamina in your spine or spring in your step or whatever it is, because you just see all these incredible women in all shapes and sizes, all colors, who are building, badass businesses and not looking for, they're not looking for magazine covers and, all that kind of stuff. They're doing really cool stuff. And that WeBank conference, some of those women, between aerospace and I want to say other women at auto parts, really you sort of say unsexy stuff. And I'm like, it's damn sexy because these women are kicking butt.
Yeah. They definitely put a lot of ideas in my head to elevate my game and to dream bigger. I would say you're absolutely right. I left there feeling badass-ish, a little bit more so, right? It's wonderful. You're absolutely right. And it's on my agenda for this year as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, let's get into some of the questions. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you came to be where you are today.
Wow. So I moved to New York 20 years ago. So at some point in the interview, the Canadian accent may just slip out a little bit. I had a very yeah, no, well, no, no, I have more of that flat Canadian accent, but it comes, I want to say you're going to hear it. It comes out, house about trout. There it is. There's my Canadian.
Got it out.
And New York hasn't beaten that out of me yet. So I moved here because I practiced law. I went to law school. I kind of grew up in a family that, decidedly, middle class or upper middle class, whatever the case may be, went to public school. It was expected of me. It wasn't like a question, you will go to university. It was like, of course, like there was no option of, taking the year out or going and doing something else or, hey, I want to go into retail. No. It was, you go to university and you don't get 1 degree, you get 2 degrees. And so law, everyone said to me, I always knew you'd become a lawyer. And I'm like, yeah, that was a default. I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I figured that was a good degree. So I practiced law for 11 years, moved into law firm management. But it was really, and I did that for 5.5 years. But my life and career and things got interesting when I got really involved with Global Business Networking Group, then known as 85 Broads, now known as Elevate. And I got really involved in that network, and Janet Hansen, the founder of 85 Broads, offered me the opportunity to become her first president. And that, I adore Janet. She's tough as nails. Kicked my butt like nobody else in my career, but her pushing me outside my comfort zone, her and that network making me see that there was a bigger vision for myself, that really unlocked everything to date. And, ultimately writing the book that was published 2 years ago, the whole idea of, burning desire to write a book, not in my lifetime. No, can't tell you that I ever thought that I would write a book. And again, that was a question of, what are the questions? What are the things your network sees in you? And, should you, instead of fighting those things, should you stop and listen and say, is there something I can be doing with this? Is this thing that comes so naturally and easily to me, is that my secret sauce? And maybe I should do something with it. So there in a nutshell.
Nice. It sort of sounds like that career move was, I don't want to label it the driver's seat. When I say the driver's seat, it's really taking ownership for your career and steering it into the direction you want and being responsible for the outcomes of your career. Would you say that was one of those game-changing moves for you in terms of charting your course?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 moments when I think about people who are listening to this podcast and sort of think, how does this apply to them? The career move I made from being lawyer to, say, in law firm management. And I realized when I wanted to make that change back in 2002, and this is one of the roadmap case studies I have in my book about this own career change, I realized that I didn't have the network to make that career change. And so I had to build a whole new network. And there was a piece of that was like, okay, what are the things you need to have to be in the driver's seat? You need to have expertise. You need to own what it is that you want to be known for. You've got to own it, before you, step into that role. If you're in one role and want to do something else, no one's going to hand it to you and say, oh yeah, we believe you can do that. I took courses. I went back to NYU's School of Continuing Professional Studies. I went back and got a certificate in HR and professional development, career development, because I was like, all right, where can I, fill in the blanks in my resume where I want to do this career change, built the network, did all of those things. So that was where really that one time where I think, okay, there I really got in the driver's seat. And I wasn't anticipating making a career change when Janet tapped me to become the first president. But why I say it's kind of taking, I want to say that career ownership or career entrepreneurship, as I like to think of it, is I became a member of 85 Broads just like anybody else. Go online, make my little profile, put up my picture, slide the credit card. Anyone could do that. What a lot of people don't do is then get involved. And I threw myself into that network. I was probably a member only for about 6 to 8 months when Janet tapped me and said, I want you to become president. And the reason I threw myself into that network so like wholeheartedly, from blogging, like every tool they had for members, blogging on the site, volunteering, I did it all. And the reason I did it was purely selfish. I was in a management role tasked with building an alumni program for a global law firm, and I was given no resources. I had no staff and no budget. So I needed an example of a self-fulfilling, self-motivated community, and what were the tools and why members did this. And so 85 Broads was a great case study for me to say, what is going on here that I could maybe apply in this law firm, because I don't have anything else other than maybe some self-motivated, alumni to make it a program, because I have no staff and no budget. I can't offer them a steak dinner because I got no money to do that. So I really got involved. It was like, when you talk about that selfishness of networking, I mean, I was purely selfish. I threw myself in there to extract every bit of information I could because I needed to apply it in my job. But the fact that I did that brought me to Janet's attention. So I was an active member. I was asking interesting questions. And so when I think about, people and taking that career ownership, what are you doing for your own career, maybe between the 9 to 5, so to speak? And what is the stuff that you can be doing that is going to help your job, but may have some other unexpected consequences, and good ones?
I love that story so much. What comes up for me is risk, because you have to be willing to say yes to these things that scare the pants off of you. And I'm sure as you're doing your role and now you're tapped to be president of this organization, what goes through your mind? And talk to us about
oh my God, that's
how you feel about risk.
I'm like, because, joked earlier, being Canadian, being a lawyer, being Virgo, risk this is not my DNA. It's avoiding that. So how do you position yourself to take a risk? Because when Janet offered me the position of president, this was an equity position. There was no salary involved. And so I had to take a step back and say, right, can I do this? And, joke again about being Canadian. I mean, I like healthcare. I had a job that had full benefit. I mean, I didn't have staff and a budget, but I had I have a regular paycheck. I had benefits. I had really good healthcare. And I remember sort of sitting there thinking, can I do this? And then talking to my then husband about it and the opportunity and what it meant. And it was a friend at the law firm who I was working at, who I chatted with, who partner at the firm. And she said to me, what's the worst thing that can happen, Kelly? And I looked at her and she said, you can come back here and have your job back. And I'm like, oh, right. If you have a marketable skill set, people talk about having their side hack, or, you're waiting tables, waiting for that acting job. If you've got a marketable skill set that you can fall back on, that kind of gives you the ability to take risk. And yes, you got to have income coming in, or maybe you've got savings. So, the one other piece, and I think of this whole thing in terms of investing in your career ownership, your career entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it is, as I like to say, you've got to have your expertise, you need to have your network, you need to have your bank account. Mm-hmm. And there's an element of that is financial. I think there's an element also of it that have you invested in other people so that they could say to you, you know what? Give up your apartment and, bunk in with us, or babysit my kids and I'll build your website, or start your business. Don't worry about paying rent. I got an extra desk at my office that you can come in and use. Like, have you got that kind of bank account you can fall on? And yes, I think a part of it is, as I like to refer to it, as the Yes Me Fund. The best investor for your career dreams is you. And, yes, put money aside for, the smart things to do in terms of retirement and, your 401k and all of those kind of things. But have your Yes Me Fund, because the ability to walk away from a really well-paying job because I wanted to take this unknown opportunity that has been so fruitful, At some point, it may be fruitful again in the financial way that when I was an attorney. But in the meantime, it has been so. You and I chatted before this podcast started. I was just 7 weeks in Australia. I was thinking about it flying back. The last time I took that long of a time period off was when I graduated from law school in 1991. So, this has been so fruitful, that this opportunity to jump, but I had all these pieces in place. And, it's one of my quotes I like to say to people, if you're not your own best investment, I don't know who is. And so invest in yourself, invest in your relationships, invest in your knowledge base, invest in letting your network know that that's your knowledge base and what you should be found for, and have that bank account so that you're not sitting there wringing your hands going, oh, I'd love that job, but, it doesn't pay enough. And, gosh, maybe it doesn't right away, but if you're able to have your rent covered and, whatever, that's one of those great financial lessons. And I know we're not going to have a financial, but I think it's a real important piece of career. It was one of those really smart kind of money lessons I learned from my ex-husband, and the ability to decide what your lifestyle is so that you can pursue what your dreams are and walk away. But also the lesson for me was when I really spent time banking the money, yes, it enabled me to take the opportunity with 85 Broads. But when I was doing my job in a law firm, it enabled me to do my job better. Why? Because I could make really clear decisions that were not predicated on, oh my God, what if they fire me if I say this and I need my paycheck? And I know not everyone is in that privileged position, but I worked around too many professionals who ratcheted up their lifestyle every time they got a pay increase, they would increase their lifestyle. And I'm like, no, there's something so much greater in the ability to walk away. And it just gives you the ability to do that, just gives you so much more potential in your career and really enables you to take that ownership.
I love that. It just makes me think about my emergency fund and how it's really been crucial to being an entrepreneur. Just what you're saying is banking, putting it away so that you can chart your course a little bit more with less fear and having something to fall back on. So I love that. Can you talk to us about mindset? What do you have to tell yourself to step into these big opportunities or to be successful in your career? What about mindset work?
It's, how do you, the chatter in your brain that tells you shouldn't be there. I think this is, again, where relationships are so important. And I think knowing you've got that supportive community of people, and it might be a few close friends, it might be mentors, I think that helps you in terms of settling that gremlin in your brain that tells you can't do it. And I think, if you've got to sit back, and I'd say to people, sit back and think about who you're surrounding yourself with. And are they feeding the gremlin or are they beating it back for you? When I think about examples again, and I'll pull from the book, Tina Roth Eisenberg, she's Swiss Miss on Twitter. She's the founder of Creative Morning. She's the founder of Tattly, those fabulous temporary tattoos. Friends Work Here, a boutique co-working space, as well as To-Do, which is this really great to-do list, online to-do list. All of those businesses, she started one after she'd have children. So, suspecting if there's, people who listening to this who have kids and thinking entrepreneurship's not for them. No, she said her children were her motivation. And, I'm saying, staying focused, staying organized and getting things done, who better than parents and particularly moms. And also her ideas, she would sort of vet her kind of frustration with things. And her network was like, well, we can do that. And the idea for Tattly, the fabulous temporary tattoos, her daughter came home from a birthday party and had a loot bag and it had, some temporary tattoos. And Tina is Swiss and a designer, a graphic designer originally by profession. And she has this motto that you either change something or you don't complain. Like you don't complain about something that you can change. So it's like, shut up or change it is sort of her motto. And so her daughter was all excited to get these little tattoos on. And Tina was like, oh God, look at the design, ugh. And she said, Tina, either change it or shut up. So she reached out to her network and said, has anyone ever thought about, the skin as the next sort of design frontier, designing for this surface as opposed to walls or paper or whatever else. And by the next morning, she had all these designs in her inbox of all these people said, Tina, like, do it. Here's designs. I want to be part of this. So do you have that network who could help you be that change? And, another example from my book, my friend Verily Crows, she was a tax attorney, with one of the big four, and, right on that verge of grabbing the big brass ring of being made partner. And it's not something she wanted. And she knew her existing network, family, friends, whatever, they weren't going to be too crazy and couldn't understand, the fact that she wanted to step away from this. So she had to build a new network, and she went to, surrounded herself with entrepreneurs, creative people, did a mastermind group of other women who wanted to step out of their existing careers into something new, because she knew to take the risk of stepping into this new thing, she needed to surround herself with people who had a mindset that would be supportive and understanding. I know our friends and family, love and adore us and want the best for us, but sometimes, their vision of what we should be may not be the vision we want to step into. So, sort of a long answer on all of that, but, to quiet that gremlin or to really sort of figure out, what's this creature that's in our head that's, holding us back, or, do some sort of soul searching, but also look around in terms of that soul searching of who you're surrounding yourself with. And do you need to change some of the conversations you're having with people around you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. What would you say the formula is for successfully owning your career?
We talked about it a little bit earlier. I think it's, build your expertise. The cocktail I like to say, build your expertise, build your network, build your bank account. And like you said, on the third one, the bank account, I don't think that's just financial. It's are you helping other people that in sort of in-kind ways that they could help you? Mm-hmm. And it might be the stuff that you would otherwise have to fork out for.
I'm not sure if we touched on this, but can you think of a moment in your career that you avoided responsibility?
We sort of touched on it before, and when you had, truth be told, when you sort of sent me the questions before and I got to that one, I was like, oh, I've never discussed that. That's a great one. Okay, you know what? I can think of two moments. One was, kind of dial it back to when I went off to university and, what were the career choices, and not feeling that I had the breadth of opportunity to explore at that age, sort of 17, 18 years old because of family pressure. So, you know what, and why I didn't step up and say, but no, I want to try and do these other things. And so I kind of look at that point in my life. The other is, when I think about, I worked at 3 law firms as an attorney, and I don't think I spent enough time in terms of thinking about responsibility, and maybe it's part of what I share with other people now. But when you really think about what is it that you need to be successful, what's the work environment, what's the diet, so to speak, in the workplace? Like sometimes we get really dissatisfied with our job, what we're in, and we're really frustrated. But if you take a step back and say, okay, what is it? Like, you might enjoy the work that you're actually doing, like, the actual work, but is there something else in the work environment that if you had made another choice, you're like, oh, you know what, if I've gone with them instead of them. So some of that I sort of think is like, hey, when you're thinking about your career, like step back and really take that, like, what do I need to be successful? Like, do I need a collaborative work environment, or do I excel in a competitive work environment? Does it matter what my title is, or am I more about, the money? Like, do I need quiet space to work, or could I work in a big, open plan or a bullpen or, what have you? And I think about that because there was one firm that I worked at in Toronto where I would say it checked all the boxes for me. The work was interesting. It was very collaborative, competitive as anything to make partner, but there wasn't the knives in people's back to, hey, they're only going to make 4 people partners, so, kill off everybody else kind of thing. Everyone in the firm, from, I want to say the mailroom, the receptionist, up to the most senior partner, we all knew we were rowing in the same boat. There wasn't a hierarchy that way in terms of we're all rowing in the same boat. we all are dedicated to customer service and client service. So it wasn't like, hey, you're the receptionist, you're off the hook on this. Everybody knew that client service was number one. I got very involved with, I would say, sort of firms, and I was only at this firm for 2 years, really involved with sort of firm, like recruiting and other kind of things within the firm. And I take a step back and I'm like, if I ever go back to a corporate job, here's the things I need. I need interesting work. I need it in an environment that is collaboratively competitive. I need to have high involvement in bringing in the business and bringing it in a business relationship way. And I also need to be involved in making work life at the corporation itself really good. And if it doesn't check all of those boxes, and I ended up at a firm where, a couple of those boxes weren't checked. And when I think about my career, and if I had actually owned up to that, I might have made a different choice in terms of the firm I would have gone to.
Very helpful. Very helpful. So I know we talked about the formula for owning your career. Are there any tools, Kelly, that you would recommend to people that they can use to successfully own their career?
That's
any resources that you have found helpful?
Well, I obviously think they should read my book.
I think so too. I put it in my book.
Yeah. So there. Put that out there. Let me give some plugs for a couple of other resources in terms of books and things that are out there that I think are really helpful. Kate White, former editor-in-chief at Cosmo, her book, The Gutsy Girl Handbook, is fabulous. If you're in a corporation, if you're, I would say you're still one of those, people who are still in a job, and there's nothing wrong with having a job because it comes with, a paycheck and a whole lots of other stuff. And it may be that the first 15 or 20 years of your career is going to be that route. Kate White's book, fantastic. If you don't know what you're going to do, Maxine McCoy's book, You're Not Lost. And it is really fabulous in terms of thinking about, particularly for millennial women, what's this journey and where is it going? And the fact that you can't figure it out, no problem. When I think about, my biggest frustration the first part of my career was I wanted stuff to happen. Like I was like, why hasn't this happened for me yet? As an attorney, why haven't I been tapped on this? And then when I look back with reflection, my career and the career I was supposed to have wasn't supposed to start till now. And I'm 53. So you know what? All of us have our own career rhythm, and, focusing on that versus others and not, again, feeding the gremlin. And I think Maxie's book is absolutely fabulous that way. Tiffany Dufu's book, Drop the Ball. I think there's too much we think we should be doing, particularly as women. And some of it is like, screw it. Just the bed can stay unmade. The laundry can be undone. The dishes don't need to be, you don't have to be perfect in all things. To be best at yourself, some things have got to fall, and you got to just let that guilt kind of go away. The last book I would recommend in terms of thinking about, are you prepared to do this, and what has life prepared you for? I think Katharine Graham's book, Personal History. She's the late great editor of the Washington Post. She came from a very privileged background. She was groomed to be a housewife. And, to cut to the chase, she took control of, the Washington Post. And she saw that company through Watergate. And she had to fight a lot of gremlins and demons in her own mind in terms of her capability and ability to be someone running, a major corporation like that. The reason Warren Buffett has never written his own, kind of career and life story is, as he has said, my great friend, the late Kay Graham, wrote Personal History. It's all been said. So in terms of thinking about, your doubts, in terms of your leadership, in terms of what prepares you, sometimes life is going to throw something in front of you, and it may be positive or negative. What are you going to do? And you're the only one who can decide that. And I think, that book, Personal History, is just a fabulous one to kind of go, you know what? Yeah, maybe life is groomed. You think life has groomed you for one thing, and then that other thing falls right in front of you. What are you going to do? And when you take that role, how are you going to lead it? And I can't say enough about Kay Graham's book.
I love that. What the recommendations you made are interesting to me because they're all reading. And it's obvious that you are well read. So I think when when we talked about the formula, some of that is education, which comes through the reading. It's interesting that you didn't mention LinkedIn. Some people mention LinkedIn. Some people are shy to go on LinkedIn. But I found it so useful to hear some of these books that I haven't even heard about myself. So obviously making time to read, to elevate yourself is important in taking ownership of your career.
Well, I mean, I spend so much time online. There's something that is delightful about getting off of all of that. I also think some of this stuff, and like I said, I have my little career formula there, but I think there's a lot of life now that we want to happen quickly. The swipe or the click, like this is going to happen. Checklists. We love listicles. Like, hey, what's the 3 things I can do? And what's this? And some of this stuff I think is so highly personal. I think it's great to get ideas from other people. I think there's, learning other people's stories and sort of, but there's not like, it's not like baking a cake that I can give you. Here's the exact measurements and you're going to have a nice, career pound cake like I've had. Like you could do the same things that I've done. And my hope is that, guess what? You'll do a whole lot better. You'll succeed in ways that I never imagined. That to me is interesting. So, in terms of those kind of resources, yeah, you can read, all the other stuff. And, my book and others might have some checklists in there and things like that. But take some time to, put some blank space in your calendar. Take some time to reflect. Take some time to not necessarily read just career books. And that's why I throw Kay Graham's in there. No one ever thinks of it as a career or leadership book. And I'm like, damn, yes, it is. It's a major one. What wasn't intended to be written that it is maybe in that category, but that's what it is. But like, take some time and do that. Interestingly, and people know this about me, like my biggest, I want to say, business, career, everything crush is on Warren Buffett. And the reason for that is he is so in tune to his own needs. And maybe that gets back to my longer answer before of deciding, like, how do you take risk? How do you take responsibility? How do you do those things? You got to know yourself and where you can be successful. So Warren knew he couldn't be successful in New York. So after 2 years early in his career, he went back to Nebraska and moved back home to Omaha. I mean, people in Omaha are mortified that he still lives in the same house. The fact that he knows he doesn't need more than that, to me, is like so significant. The fact that he's like never bought a new car and drives himself to work every day. Like he knows what he needs to be fulfilled, and he does that. And I think the more of us can know ourselves, and I think some of that comes through reading. Sometimes that comes from reflection. I mean, Warren spends, I think he takes 4 meetings a week at most, and he spends most of his days reading.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, so, what can you do to reflect and learn, and where can you give yourself blank space to let this marvelous thing between our ears, both, not necessarily the really primal little tiny brain that we have where the gremlin lives, but let that other thing, that other bigger part of our brain, let some ideas zap across, and don't just rely on, I love TED Talks, but don't just rely on TED Talks or podcasts or, God, you better be listening to this podcast though, because I've got good resources here. But, spend some quality time just reflecting and what is singing to your heart and your career soul.
I love that so much. The final question was going to be around advice for owning your career, but that is just so tremendous that, you launched right into that nicely, and I love it. I don't know if there's anything else, any parting comments that you want to add.
Part of this is like I try and follow my own advice, and you write a book on networking, and yes, I follow my own advice on networking. And I'm sitting here, looking at the side of my desk, a little messier than I like it. I like it nice and clean. But one of my things I did this year was decided I had to read more novels. And yes, I read a lot of business books, and part of that is for work, but where I often get a lot of inspiration is from novels. And the idea of that luxury of turning things off. And as you and I know, I took a big old flight from Sydney, Australia yesterday.
And you're awake.
I treasure, a lot of us get really frustrated with commutes or plane rides, and we're trying to stay connected. I treasure that time now. That's the time where people can't reach me. That's the time where I can just let my brain go wild. And so find more times that you can, not have scheduled activities is sort of a thing I would challenge people for their careers. And you may say, I don't have time. Well, hey, if you're someone who does have a commute, don't do anything on your commute. Just sit. On planes, I usually don't have an agenda of what I want to accomplish on a plane. I may snooze. I may look out the window. I may watch a movie. I may watch the movie that the person next to me is watching. I may read a book. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got sort of like a bunch of stuff that I take with me, but if I do none of it, that's fine. So maybe it's like packing my own little, like moms and dads have to do with kids when they take them on a car trip. They have to pack every possibility, more diapers, extra water bottles, some books, bring this toy. Do we have the pacifier? Maybe I sort of pack for myself like that on a plane, and then I may or may not need it. Maybe that's one way of kind of looking at it. But find time this year, I'd say for everyone for their career this year, find time this year just for blank space and just let your brain come up with ideas.
Is it experience that gets you to that place where you calmly know I can just check out and just, it just seems like there's a calmness or an ease. There's not a stress about a list. I've got to do 10 things. I'm a mom. I'm juggling all these things and I'm thinking more blank space, from this conversation. But it just sounds like it's a journey to get to that place where you could just be fully self-aware and to know what works for you and to, I don't know, it just sounds like it's been a journey to get to this place.
Yeah, and you know what? Writing the book was really a journey in terms of knowing, kind of when and how I produce my best work. The attorney in me kind of could enter into the writing process with a very client-focused mindset of, I have a book deal, this is what I need to do, this is the date the publisher needs the manuscript. That's like I was a corporate attorney. That's like a corporate closing. It's like, I don't know how we're going to get there, but they will have their manuscript on that date because that's what lawyers do. It's like, fulfill the client needs. That's going to happen. But I really needed to spend time to think about, and I could get ideas from other writers, how and when they write, but I need to kind of really reflect on how and when I produce my best work. So that was one of the things I paid a lot of attention to over that 4.5 month period that I had to write Build Your Dream Network and drop it on the manuscript on my editor's desk. And what I did find was when I would go for meditative walks. So I'm not one of these people who does a power walk with, earbuds in and a podcast. I just walk, I just get out there and, listen to my environment. Maybe it's because New York City and you can't have something blasted in your ears loud enough to get the honks and stuff out. So you might as well just listen to the honks and the horns and the sirens. And what I found on those meditative walks is sometimes, I would have breakthroughs in terms of writing and ideas and where things were supposed to go, or I would break through writer's block. So that's where I sort of say, create that blank space. And so your blank space may be meditation. It may be when you exercise. So I would say, all right, challenge yourself when you exercise. If you've already said, I get on the treadmill and I listen to, an audiobook or I listen to the news. I'm like, what? Put on some classic music. Like, give your brain a break from all the information and see what happens.
Awesome. Well said. This has been tremendous. I have enjoyed the conversation. As you can see, I've gone off script quite a bit because I was so interested in what you were saying. So thank you for being so gracious to allow me to do so. Can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Well, there's my website, which is jkellyhoey.co, and that's J Kelly, Kelly, and Hoey, and it's a .co, not a .com. So just in case people are like, what? Where is she? And then, always on Twitter. That's Twitter in terms of stuff. That's my drug. That's the cocktail party I like to hang out at, and that's JK Hoey, and you can find me there.
Why did you pick Twitter? Because we were just talking about the noise, and in terms of social media, the different platforms, that one is like a fire hose of information just constantly.
Yeah.
Why
So
is that your choice?
Well, I mean, obviously, maybe it's not obviously. LinkedIn is probably somewhere where I get, the best sort of followers in terms of content and producing content. And I'm very focused on that one in terms of, all right, once a day, Monday through Friday, I'll drop some kind of a pearl for people or, an article, something that I think will help. Yes, it's helpful for me, but something that I think would be of interest and a nugget of information to help other people in their career or business. But Twitter, in terms of those ideas, so I look at it as the opportunity, I think, to attend a bunch of cocktail parties that we wouldn't otherwise have been invited to. And I think Twitter was, in its purest form, was the ultimate sort of democratization of access. And based on being an interesting conversationalist or interested in what other people have to say, the equivalent of being the good guest at a party, you can have conversations and doors can be open for you that, when would they have been done in the past? When would, when I think of some of the friendships I've made, I think of, the paperback edition of my book, the foreword was written by best-selling author Tom Peters. Before Twitter, where would I have met Tom? Like some sort of a sycophant at a book signing, gushing over him? Like, please, that wouldn't have led to it. Instead, over at the time when he wrote the foreword, 7 years of conversation on Twitter. And I say he's a friend and a mentor. And we've met once in person for coffee. And it was, the same person online, the two of us, except, we had longer than, 140 or 280 characters to talk. And I think we both swore more than we do online. But it was, so that's why I say Twitter. So, and that's also why, people kind of look and say, why do you follow so few people? It's to keep out some of that noise. And I put more things on lists that I can go to. And I probably mute more things now because I'm like, I don't need to see this. So Twitter, I'd say create lists so that you can just go and look at that, whether it's that particular hashtag that's a conversation, you want to keep your eye on, whether it's news, whatever it may be. And I like going to Twitter itself in terms of seeing people. So on the basis of that, that's why I follow so few people, because when I go to Twitter and see my stream, there's people I want to see, and they clutter in the noise. I can put on a list and I can just go into that when I know I need to look at it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing so many pearls. I'm going to use your word pearls because I love that. So many good things that you have said today. So many people will benefit from this message. I will be screaming it on social media because I'm so excited. You are episode 9, so we have to wait for us to get to episode 9. But thank you so much for sharing so much value.
Oh my God, this has been such a pleasure. Have me back, please.
Okay. You said it. I am going to have you back. I'm going to do the best of, and then you're going to come back because you are a part of the best of, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode on the SimoneMorris.com website, where you can find links to everything that was mentioned today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.